Alright everyone, so in this video here, I wanted to give you my impressions and thoughts with the Nintendo Switch OLED. Now, I've gone through, this is actually the fourth Switch that I've bought during its life cycle, at least as of this video. So, I bought the original Switch when it first launched. Then when the revised Switch came out, I got that. When the Switch Lite came out, I got that. And now we're here with the Switch OLED. Now, first and foremost, between the two colors, there are two different color options for the OLED. You got this white model, and you also have the black model with the two different color Joy Cons. What is it? The red and blue one, I think. Basically the same Joy-Con two-tone colors that Nintendo's always used. I have to say, between the two, this one to me is the better color combination. It makes the design of it, the color scheme, just makes it look more modern. And not only that, the way they designed this dock is much better, much more refined. And an unfortunate part of it is that it took them this long to come out with a new dock for this. And just to let you know, just on a side note, if you do have the original dock design, the Switch OLED will work on that, and vice versa. So if you have the other version of the Switch, it'll work on this version of the dock too. So they're interchangeable, though to be honest, between the two, I do prefer this dock with one exception. Even though this does have a built-in Ethernet port on it, from what people has been testing from it, it's not really any faster or slower than if you're just using Wi-Fi. So for me, it seems like the Ethernet is a little bit of a waste, only because typically having a hardware connection typically gets you a much more reliable and faster connection. However, this time around, it seems like it's just going to be more of a reliable connection than necessarily a faster connection. So that is something to keep in mind. But in my particular case, I have to rely on the Wi-Fi just because the room I'm in, there's no Ethernet. If the day comes that, I move to a different place, yes, I'm going to make sure it has Ethernet jacks. But anyway, so first and foremost, actually, if we pan the camera over some, this is actually going to make a little more sense. So, one thing I did notice too right away the first time I used this dock is how loose this is. So, you can definitely tell this time around that the way this dock is designed so that it's not going to basically rub against the tablet when you're putting in the dock. So just to let you know, I do have a screen protector on here. I am getting a different one, but this screen protector I'm using actually came with that case back there. But when you put in the Switch in the dock here, it's much looser until you get to the very bottom of it. So then it will essentially grab onto the USB port on the bottom. And the back portion of this does actually come off this time around. So in some ways, it does make it a little bit easier to connect things to it. But the cool thing too, of course, is that obviously, you know, if you use switches, you can take the Joy-Cons out, and it still looks pretty good on it. Though I will admit, this time around, having the Joy-Cons actually on here does make it look better. So while the other color, because it's all one color, kind of blends in, if you get the white one, visually it just looks better with the Joy-Cons on them. But anyway, I'm going to change angles, and I'm going to go into talking about the tablet portion itself. Alright, so some other things I wanted to talk about here is the overall look of it. Now, the Switch, this version of the Switch, is not 100% exact measurements from the previous Switch. The dimensions are very similar, except it's just ever so slightly wider. So if it's slightly wider, what does that mean? Well, if you have form-fitting cases, if you use grips for the Switch, say like the Satisfy grip, it's not going to work with this. You basically have to get a brand new one. Now, if you have cases that are not really form-fitting cases, they're just more, just the typical types of cases, typically those are going to work fine. Obviously, the previous version of the dock is going to work fine. So all that is fine. It really just comes down to more of the form-fitting stuff. The form-fitting type cases, or the ones that are kind of like molded for the Switch. Stuff like that, you're going to have to get new ones. Now, when it comes to the overall design of the Switch itself, the Joy-Cons, even though Nintendo stated that, the internals are slightly modified, they are, more durable. That's what Nintendo says. Who knows at this point? But the dimensions and the way they feel and all that with these particular Joy-Cons, they're pretty much identical to the previous versions. Now, let's talk about the actual tablet itself. And this is where things get pretty interesting here. Now, first of all, obviously this does use an OLED screen. So, if you don't know what OLEDs are, the biggest difference between OLEDs and, say, like LCD screens is that LCDs, you need a backlight. So, if you use the other version of the Switches, even the Switch Lite, those are LCD screens. They use a backlight, and that's why even with very dark screen or very dark scenes, or even like a black scene that's going on, you're still going to get that grayness going on through the screen. The OLEDs, the individual pixels, are the ones that lights up. So let's turn this on real quick, and I'm just gonna close our Hellblade real quick. So let's boot up Metroid Dread. Good game, by the way. Oh, actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's take a look at it physically. Now, obviously, you can see the screen is bigger, and also the even though the dimensions are, I would say, 95% similar to the previous one, it is slightly wider, but it has much smaller bezels, so the system itself just makes it look more modern. And I will say this, and just on the side note, I do have the Steam Deck on pre-order. But I've been watching several videos about the Steam Deck recently, and one thing I've noticed very, very quickly is that, man, that thing is going to have an extremely thick bezel on that thing. But to be fair, that's more of a first generation handheld product from Valve versus this is a refresh. So, but not only that, one criticism I do have with this is the front plastic part of this is shiny. I mean, I really wish Nintendo kept this material for the front, because this shiny plastic portion, I can see it getting damaged, scratched. It's just going to look terrible over time. Now, maybe this is slightly more durable than most other shiny black plastic, but in my experience, shiny black plastic tends to just look like crap over time. So this is probably my biggest criticism with the design of the Switch OLED physically, is this black shiny plastic they use around the screen. And another thing I wanted to talk about, I'm not sure if this was like a manufacturing thing or it's just how this plastic is made, but I did notice that there is like a little, it's not very noticeable. This is like very, very nitpicking, but there is a slight imperfection in the plastic here and here. So while this is something I'm not going to exchange the system out for, but I am just letting you know that, you know, hey, the plastic on this may not be, let's just say, perfect. So that is something to keep in mind. But what I do like is the back portion. This seems like it's used in a similar type of material that Microsoft uses for their Surface tablets. So the Surface Go's, the Surface Pros, is that aluminum metallic type material they use. It seems like it's the same thing here. And not only that, but the kickstand on this. Oh my god, is this thing so much better than the previous version. This is pretty much what I originally wanted from the kickstand on the original Switch. So, what else? Oh, and just to let you know, they did move all the legal stuff back here, the serial number back here, and obviously the SD card is sideways now instead of like coming from the bottom. I did read that people were having issues with the SD card slot, and I think that has to do more with the 1 terabyte versions and larger, because they are ever so slightly larger. This one I have here is actually a 400 gig SanDisk micro SD card, and I don't have any issues putting it in and taking it out. So just for clarification, I think it's mostly has to do with the much larger capacities, like the 1 terabytes and above. So that is something to keep in mind. But this kickstand is so much better than the other one. It's a usable kickstand, and it's basically the same design kickstand that the Surface tablets use, that Microsoft does. So it seems like Nintendo looked at those. It's like, let's see if we can engineer a kickstand in that fashion, and they did. Now, how long is this going to last? Who knows? But from what I've read too, it's actually not too bad to replace the parts if it's needed. But if you are someone that doesn't really use the kickstand, you primarily do handheld and then just dock it, then you might not have an issue with that. But that is something to
to just put that out there. Also, the way the Joy-Cons are connected here, they're much more firm in its slot. So they don't wiggle all that much like the other version, like the previous version does. So it is ever so slightly, but not that much. Also, because of the metal type material they use, the grill here is a little different. The power button and the volume are slightly different. So the power button is an oval shape, and the volume toggle is very slightly different. One thing I will say is this cartridge slot, the way this is designed, I can understand they design it in the way so that it looks very symmetrical and, you know, looks as clean as possible. However, the previous version of the Switch, even the Switch Lite, has a little indentation in the center parts to help grab the cover a little bit more. This one, I will say, is a little bit more of a pain in the ass to open up. But I'll be honest with you, and some people might bash me for this, I primarily just download things to the Switch. I rarely buy physical games. I do buy them sometimes, but 90% of the time I'm buying them digitally, just because of the convenience factor. But yeah, overall, and yes, it still does headphone jack there. But yeah, overall, I will say is that if you're going into the Switch for the first time, get the Switch OLED. It's $349, so basically $50 more for the OLED model. You have a much better screen. Now, if you're going into this for the first time, though, which one should you get? Well, you basically got three options. You got the Switch Lite, which is $200. You got the regular Switch, which is $300, and you got the Switch OLED for $349, $350. I will say this. If you're looking to play the Switch on the go and dock it at home, skip the regular one, get the OLED. If all you care about is just playing it portably, that's going to come down to two things. One, if you really want the OLED, which the OLED screen on this is really nice, get the OLED. If portability is a bigger factor and you just want a slightly smaller handheld system to carry around, then get the Switch Lite. I think going forward, at least up until Nintendo releases a next generation console or a successor to the Switch, I think going forward it's going to be the Switch OLED and the Switch Lite. I don't think that in-between console is really going to work anymore, especially at the $50 difference. Yes, with one exception. If all you're going to do is just play it in dock mode, just use it as a console and never play handheld at all, then save the $50, get the regular Switch. It will be the same experience. There's no real difference. But quite honestly, if you're getting the Switch, I can see most people at least even occasionally doing portable gaming on it. You might as well spend the extra $50. But if you're someone that just absolutely has no interest in handheld gaming, then save the $50, get the regular Switch. You'll get that same console experience like the Switch OLED. So that's how I would see it. Get the Switch Lite if you just want absolute portability. Get the Switch OLED if you want to have the better handheld gaming experience, especially with that OLED screen. And get the regular Switch if all you care about is dock mode. You don't give two craps about handheld gaming at all. So, but yeah, let me demonstrate the screen real quick. And of course, with this much better kickstand, I can have it angled in a way that makes it look a little better on video. So right now the screen is off. If I turn it on, and just to emphasize it, I'm actually going to turn off my light. So all you're seeing now is the screen itself. So let's go ahead and boot up Metroid Dread. And look at that. This is what OLED is all about. So all you are seeing right now is what the pixels are lighting up. So like right here, if I turn the light back on, you can see that, hey, you know, screen goes up here and all that stuff. But when I turn off the light, especially when you play in the dark, look how crisp and vibrant the colors are. And this is why I said that, you know, if you are someone that is going to be playing a lot of portable gaming and you don't mind the regular size Switch, get the OLED. But look at that. The only pixels are on right now is the stuff here. Well, basically the loading part in the text. The rest of it is all black. The pixels are actually off. And quite honestly, I can see why Nintendo wanted to launch Metroid Dread alongside the Switch OLED, because this is one of the games that really shows off why OLED is really good for gaming. But yeah. So in conclusion, what do I think of the Switch OLED? Really, really nice. There are some caveats. Obviously, the shiny black plastic they use around the OLED screen, not a fan of. And also, it is slightly heavier, being that the material they use for the rear is like an aluminum type material they use. This is not plastic. If it is plastic, this is really impressive plastic, but this feels like the same. I mean, this is not plastic. But it does make the system basically slightly heavier than even the regular Switch. And that is something to keep in mind too. If you are someone that is very sensitive when it comes to weight, you know, for playing games, if you need something as light as possible, the Switch Lite is an option. The Switch Lite is a very light system. However, you don't get the docking capabilities. So that is something to keep in mind too. But all in all, this is my favorite version of the Switch. With this OLED screen, slightly bigger screen, and even though it's not that much bigger than the regular Switch, when you're playing the game, even when you're playing games, especially in handheld, even at the same distance as you normally play it, because the bigger screen makes it much more immersive. So that's really cool. So all in all, I really like this. So that's my thoughts and criticisms of the Switch OLED. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I really appreciate it. Like always, have a good one. Leave those comments down below. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe if you're not subscribing. Like always, have a good one. I'm waving goodbye.